First of all, I would like to thank Peter for having spoiled all my presentations. You've addressed almost all the topics I would like to do today, so that's an interesting way. But I will try to rebound on it. I think you've summarized quite a lot of hot topics that are on the table today. And I try to do my best to show you what are the progress of the rotorcraft safety roadmap and where we are together. Before doing so, I will provide general update, I would say on EASA side and the status, and then we'll go a bit deeper into the roadmap. I think we all recognize that 2021, as last year, has been a very special year again. This time we succeeded to set up this event. I say it's a major milestone, and having you all together here is already a great improvement, even though we have masks, social distancing, hygiene fluids everywhere around the place. But still, we've been able to make it, and that's really great. Obviously, maybe let me check this. Oh, yeah. The community, you can put this one? Yes? No, I will wait there. As mentioned several times this morning already by the great leaders that opened the shows, the helicopter community has been really instrumental during the COVID crisis. But not only, and by the way, during the COVID, it's now. In some areas, people are being shipped from hospital to hospital. And actually, in some cases, they are put in a sleeping state in a hospital and waking up in another one. And this is done thanks to helicopter operations. Having the flexibility to go from hospital to hospital in a swift and efficient way, and that's here also a demonstration that rotorcraft is key, and VTOL industry is key for some areas, as well as we've seen also here very locally in Germany, not so long ago, during the big floods, that helicopter were the only means to access some areas, where some people were desperately needed some support, whether it was medical or evacuation, and that's really great. And I would like really to thank you all. You are all part of this chain, each of you working in his environment, each of us. We are adding a piece by piece to enable the system to work and to provide the relevant services. So I think we can be proud, you can be proud of what you are doing on a daily basis, and please, people with teams behind, thanks your teams, because they are doing the job on a daily basis. Now, we had also, I would say, some 2020 real breakdown in the aviation system, and really the aviation system was trained to the maximum, and we have some lessons learned of what so-called return to normal of operations. And the first one is the data is good, but it's not everything, and sometimes a good old expert judgment, and sometimes going back to what Peter was saying, relying on people experience, enable the system to get through it. Maybe all the paperwork was not done, but still people were able to operate, and that really show that the resilience of the system. It's also highlighted that we have many interdependencies and a high propensity for risk transfer, and that's really something we need to pay attention. And one also striking issue is that integrated risk management was a key enabler to manage the disruption when it's at scale. So that's also something that the industry has recognized and hopefully is working to enable smooth handling of the future crisis, because there will be some future crises anyway. The management of external risks, typically COVID, was leading to a shift of safety paradigm from a safety of flight to a safety of passenger. And sometimes we have to take care that we are not sweeping too much on one side, but keeping a good balance between the two. Safety of flight is also taking care of passenger, and not only on the criteria. regulatory tools showed that they were flexible to some extent, and we were able to use the soft law to really overcome a number of challenges all together. It required a lot of work on all the sides, but at the end of the day, it was possible to still operate, and that's already a big challenge. Obviously, that the crisis is international by nature, and aviation is being so international that we need to address this. Local stuff is possible in some rotorcraft operation, but when you have to transport patients from a country to another, and where Europe showed its best, supporting each other, then cross-border operation, internal operations were key to make it. And also that fragmented and uncoordinated, sometimes non-aviation measure could have a great impact on us, and actually could be an obstacle for quick and safe recovery. At the same time, we have to recognize that we had opportunities to implement bold changes within the entire industry. Only speaking about our way of working together, we've switched quite extensively from regular face-to-face to more focused remote communication. It's not perfect, but at least in some instances it shows that it was as efficient. At least it's a good complement. And to remove some remote oversight, other rigidity within the regulatory framework, and we can use faster the regulatory requirements. That's something which may not be so obvious for you, but at least some changes required quite an extensive work and were done very swiftly. Would like to say also that it's not over. We see that we have ramping up, but still we have latent risks that remains and needs to be identified and obviously mitigated. They change the economic landscapes in rotorcraft partially, but in some other aviation areas significantly, and we need to pay attention to that. And that we need to know that the next crisis will be different, but still will strain the overall resilience. Speaking about resilience, some sectors shows to be more robust, and the rotorcraft community, by nature of the operations, have been less impacted or even benefiting in some instances of the crisis. And now that I have had a bit greater general aviation and business aviation, actually, contrary to what we were thinking, they are not collapsing, they are expanding. People may shift their mindset to become a bit less reliant on airlines. And it can be seen simply on the number of occurrences and the serious incidents. In dark blue, you have the commercial air transport. So you've seen that in 2020, you had a significant drop. Guess what? Nobody was flying. And on the light blue, you have helicopters, balloons, sailplane, special operation aeroplanes, and non-commercial aeroplanes. Here, the level is fairly stable, even increasing a bit, showing that they kept flying. We kept flying altogether. So that's really something that it's also stemming from what we planned. You can see that. Last year I mentioned that we were about to change. This year we have fully changed. So we have merged the general aviation and VTOL. And you'll see a bit later that there are some synergies between the two, and that's very important. Especially that we are able to increase the consistency in safety objectives between the products. Part 20, CS23 versus a CS27, and you'll see that we have worked a lot on the proportionality that was fully mentioned by Peter, and that's something we are fully aware. And we can draw parallel between business jets and rotorcraft, heavy rotorcraft, and general aviation and light rotorcraft, eVTOL, some eVTOLs, not all of them, and UAS. That's interesting. Now more on the activity side. I think you can recognize that actually, compared to 2019, so pre-COVID, the level of activities in VTOL increased significantly. And that's an interesting also lessons out of of the crisis we went through, plus 54% in the major changes applications, plus 26% on STC applications, and plus 40% in major changes to STC. So that surprising. The industry is very much alive and actually trying to keep up with what's going on in the field. I must add also that more and more we see unconventional designs. Peter, I know that you want to have a more streamlined certification process, but to be honest, sometimes it's challenging for the two of us to get where we want to go and to get where the industry is willing to go. Sometimes it's very blurry, and so it's requiring a lot of resources. And in addition, we have a lot of, here also, effect of the crisis. Research and development has been developing very fast. And we have a lot of technical advice contracts, innovation partnership contracts, and the like, which are trying to set up what's the future of aviation, but at the same time are training our resources. So there are these challenges, but I guess we are trying to do our best to support you, to support the industry, enable first deliveries, innovation, and changes that are today in the pipeline, and tackling the future of aviation. Just to give you a few stuff where we went through this year, special condition on gas airships. It's a vertical lift, by the way, so that's very interesting. And when we say airships, some of them are the size of a football pitch. I mean, to give you a rough idea. So we have also enabled Cat 2 operation on small aircraft. We have published the VTOL means of compliance phase 1, the final versions. The phase 2 for consultations, and you've been invited to provide comment. And I'm glad to say that you've commented a lot. So now we are struggling to answer to all of your comments. So find a good balance, please. It's the message of today for that. Special condition on gyroplanes that are being also set up. And yesterday, not later than yesterday, we've published the NPA for consultation on OPS and FCL for gyroplanes. First usable guidance for level 1 artificial intelligence applications with machine learning. Publication also on design verification for drones, a new concept to have a more streamlined approach proportionate to some medium risks UAS. Patrick mentioned it this morning, a study on UAM, and we were surprised by the appetite of the general public on that, and we need to be take that into account. And some surprises were about, well, safety was first. We were quite aware of that, but that wildlife protection would be the second one. It was a key surprise. Proportionality. We have just published the enhancement of safety assessment process, providing a safety continuum in the rotorcraft CS27 domain, similarly to what is done in the Part 23. Here also fully part of the rotorcraft safety roadmap. I will come back on that. Enabling designers to develop cheaper systems, hopefully safety-related systems like autopilot, situational awareness at a lower cost, so that a small operator could afford, because that's the goal. It's not could afford this kind of system, which are in 99.99% of the cases bringing a safety benefit. Speaking about safety benefit, we have published a CERT memo on net safety benefit, enabling us to do a trade-off and between what the technology will bring, what the system will bring, and the additional risks, and this trade-off translated into really safety benefit, and if it's a net one, we will go for it. And by the way, obviously we have done some hoist, and I know that some of you it's controversial, but hoist is still there, and we hope it will be the end of the story soon, and that we can move forward to the next steps, which is the next generation of hoist. By the way, I think you have some examples here in the hall, and that's very great. And in parallel, we have, as I mentioned, IPC, TAC, research support, rulemaking, standard, safety promotion, all around the place that are driving the daily business also, and that's quite challenging times. After this overview, I will focus on the rotorcraft safety roadmap itself, objectives, statistics, and implementations where we are today. Peter, you spoiled my slide again, but yes, the objective, just to remind, is to improve the overall safety of the rotorcraft by 50% within the next 10 years. 2028 is indeed the target. At the end of the day, we are in a long lead industry, so we have to be reasonable. To make the change in the next couple of years now, so 5 years was this next couple of years, and obviously in a more performance-based and proportionate. The statistics 2021, they are interesting. So you can see on the chart that the number of fatal accidents sharply decreased between 2019 and 2020, which is quite a very positive news. Commercial transport, specialized operation, and non-commercial operation, they all showed a decrease of accident and serious incident. We are this year still, the non-commercial represent 57% of the overall accidents. Oops, sorry. And today, in 2020, we are far below the average of serious accidents, 37 in 2020 compared to 70 in average over the last 10 years. And 9 on the CS27, which is a very positive news. On the CS29, we are roughly the same level, which was already quite low at the stage, but I think we can get better here also. Overall, it's a positive trend, but we must be humble. We've seen already this trend sometimes in the past and then a rebound. So please stay on the track, stay on track. Don't relax. We are on the good path. Also, we have to figure out whether the COVID has an impact on that. As I said, the number of operations you've seen may not be so reduced, but still we may have some impact. One thing is sure, it's not the Brexit impact on the statistics, because it's 2020 statistics and not 2021, where here we may have also another effect on them. Just to remind also that the rotorcraft safety roadmap is also working together with the general aviation roadmap. And we have really synergies, and the merging of the two departments is always also making sense on this point of view. Typically, Peter mentioned the risk of mid-air collisions, and I will come back on that just later on. But we are sharing common issues: access to data, safety promotion, reaching out the individuals and those very small operators, and more affordable training methods. These are really common issues that we are tackling all together. And by the way, for some of them, it's still a challenge. Getting the flight hours, so please do the reporting, install some of the equipment that could do it for you, so that we can really all together better spot where we need to put the effort. And that's also for you to really move forward. And hopefully one day the data for safety program will take on board rotorcraft, gather all this data into a data lake, will be able to provide an additional service to you, and small operator, 90% of the operators of rotorcraft are in these instances, provide a feedback on where you would stand compared to others. And others is a global scale, not only my neighbor or my very short competitor, but the entire industry. At the end of the day, it will change your vision. You will be able to drive much better where are the areas that are either different, and it may be for a good point, or completely out of scope compared to the general statistics. We are leveraging a new development on the safety roadmap, and I mentioned high conspicuity. Peter also, we have a U-Space that is being built up for the UAS, and within this U-Space, there are high conspicuity mandate requirement, and which is in-flight capability to transmit and or to receive, process, display informations from from aircraft to aircraft and to ground stations. The step one is really to propose it for use space, which are bubbles within the airspace that are being built up. But the second step, which is important for the rotorcraft community and the VTOL community, is to build up a new space solution to transfer it to more rotorcraft general aviation type of operations. And using the flight information services. I mean, that's something we don't want to reinvent the wheel. We don't want to impose too many systems, but at least that's where we are working. Today, the step one is ongoing. Peter, you mentioned that you are following it closely. I repeat also, industry should be on board. I repeat the plea from EHA. Too many times we have no representative from the rotorcraft community. But after, we have a lot of complaints. Anticipate. I know sometimes it's an effort. I know it's costly. At the end of the day, it's for your benefit. So the objective is really to develop, I will not go through the complete slide, but affordable system, single device policy. So if you have a device that it is compatible with the entire system, affordable infrastructure for the service provider, and a pan-European applicability. With open standard, hopefully, that we are able to build up all together. And also suitable for urban and low-level environments, typically where rotorcraft are operating. This could be an example, because we will have to collaborate with traditional aviation, general aviation. And by the way, mid-air collision, in the last 5 years, we have had, I think, 7 accidents with a number of fatalities between general aviation and rotorcraft. With today's technology, we do think it's quite incredible, knowing that your smartphone can position yourself in a way much better than any system dated 20 years ago. And now we have the drones coming in that are going to operate the future urban air mobility in some instances. We will have to collaborate. And obviously we have today a technology which is the certified ADS-B out, or in. Now we want also to promote the SRD 860 band, which is used already by some provider like Flarm, PilotAware, and the like. The idea is not to force you to switch to one provider to another or to promote one provider, is to enable these devices to collaborate and by a standard. And obviously, for very small operator or private operator, is to go to even cheaper solutions that are not certified but still available, like mobile telephony. And we are conducting some testing and research on that. So from certified to standard and to TBC, because we are still looking at the feasibility. In some instances, it could be difficult, but we are working with the telecommunication people to make it happen one day. On the roadmap, we have several work streams. I will focus on some of them. The design. So I'm first willing to thank most of the OEM, and the ones that are here today are the ones we have to thank for their dedication. All of them develop a dedicated roadmap on each of their products in the spirit of the rotorcraft safety roadmap, following the engagement we had. And that's really positive. Net safety benefit, here also we have published it. We will expand the scope in 2022 so that we can see after a phase of implementation how it works, how it's introduced, and we rely on you to provide projects. Proportionality in the CS27, and I encourage you to see the pre-recording from Clément. He did an extensive job on really this safety continuum. And then developing tools to secure more the innovation in the certification framework. You said, Peter, you want to have it more streamlined, and to have a pre-application concept that we are working on. Hopefully that will be proper. And then we will develop upfront of projects for specific innovation you have in mind, dedicated regulatory material like special condition, ESF, means of compliance, that can be reused directly when you will apply for real projects. So it's de-risking upfront for STC holder, OEMs, the certification with clear regulatory material before the official launch of the projects on your side. We are working on a lot of rule-making tasks in the design phase. I will not go through all of them, but I can tell you it's one of the most extensive programs in the CSCs that is running. And I can thank the teams to deliver from regarding installation that has been done to critical rotor component, human factor that has been published, FCOM hoist, survivability. I think you had a pre-recording also in IASA videos, and then some potential retrofit on oil monitoring burst track. The working training safety, that's also a point we all recognize is very important. There are two aspects, really the training safety itself and the tools that we are using to do so. And as mentioned, we have qualified in 2021 the first virtual reality simulator. It's the first worldwide, IASA. And the idea was also stemming from the rotorcraft safety roadmap, is to facilitate and promote the development of these new devices to provide cost-effective training devices to operators where there is no market today. You take a Robinson operator, there is no simulator today, typically, and they have to do it on the aircraft. Sometimes it's good, you have to do some training on the aircraft, but maybe prepare a bit more on a simulator would be quite reasonable. And the outcome, we have the first FNPT2 virtual simulator approved. By the way, you can test it here, I think. Not the approved one, but the future. And we are working on a FTD3 virtual reality simulator approval, hopefully by the end of the year. So the second one will be qualified. The next steps is working on the crediting, because we all know it's very nice to have good tools. If you cannot take credit out of it, on an economical basis, it's less attractive. So the idea is to go from 5-hour credit today for FNPT2 up to 10 hours. And for some devices with certain capabilities, so-called, meaning typically full flight motion, or very representative, close to a full flight simulator, up to 15 hours. By doing so, we'll still be aligned with ICAO. So it's something we are launching, and hopefully we'll see that very soon, or soon, into the pipeline, and operators will be able to use that on a daily basis. And by the way, it's not only addressing the safety, this one is also addressing the environment. And that's something, a point, if you are doing it on a simulator, probably you are not emitting as much as you would do it in flight today. So it's a double gain, and we need to promote sustainability in our industry. Peter mentioned it. It's key for social acceptability today. And I know you are all working on that, but every piece of the entire ecosystem must show that they are doing their share. The risk maneuver in LAPL and PPLH syllabi are being revised. We have updated the helicopter flight instructor guide. I encourage you to really have a look with some key area. For the revalidation requirement of PPLH holder, we are working on really from 2 hours to 6. I mean, 2 hours for renewing your license on a very unstable rotorcraft. Nobody would be able to really make it a sound justification. 6 hours, and we hope that with the simulator introduction, it's going to be something not too costly. Workstream safety rating. We have some key players around the room, but we have made a significant improvement. From 2 years ago, where we had only the idea, or 3 years ago, the idea, the concept, what could be done, what has been done, with a lot of reluctance within the industry. We have made this year a big step forward with the creation of an industry-wide approach and the creation of the Vertical Aviation Safety Team, VAST, where EHA, HAI, the regulators are part of it. And it's really a worldwide approach to tackle a zero accident, obviously, but it's really a working group, which is, by the way, co-chaired by IASA and NBL, that has been created, and where tangible criteria are being defined. not something, in the air, tangible criteria. And we do hope that within a couple of years, we will come up with some reasonable proposal to you that will be translated into the market and the operator could leverage. Simplification, this is a real, here also, Peter, you mentioned that from the time you were doing flights was almost with no requirements and everything was fine, to today we have been increasing the number of requirements, work to be done sometimes where you perceive burden. So last year we just completed the study. This year we not only completed it, but we analyzed it. And we have translated it into actions that are now going to be in EPAS. Formally, it has been accepted. And really to make life easier, and it's targeting small operator. So that sometimes we have one rule-making task only, but most of them will realize that it's interpretation by the national authorities of some requirements that are driving the operator feeling that there is an undue burden. So it's harmonization, explanation, proportionality approach, proportionate approach, whether I'm a small operator working goods in several years, do I have to do, I still do my job as I do today, but do I need to have 20 audits a year? No. It's also telling the national authorities that yes, it is possible to combine audits. You may not have, one audit per part camo, part 145, ATO stuff. No, you can have one combined audit or several combined audits when it's possible, but at least trying to reduce the burden. And some practices, how to harmonize them, we'll do it via safety promotion, not only to operators, but also to national authorities. On the simplification, here also you spoiled my slide completely, Peter. But yes, on the AO part and the rule-making task, I didn't want to put the rule-making task because sometimes people are telling me it's a Chinese, we don't understand. So I just to recap, but it's enable multi-pilot operation of single pilot certified aircraft. I mean, that's also a key point. I will focus also on the merge of the single engine and multiple engine type rating, instrument rating into a single one, creation of two groups of rotorcraft for operators, simplification of the aerodrome knowledge, introducing a new training and checking scheme for SPO. All of that is going to simplify the overall framework. Not only to simplify, but to take more credit. If I'm flying, before you were not able to take credit from a A-to-A route, now it's going to count. And that's really also a game changer. It will reduce the cost, reduce the burden, and improve overall the safety because you are able to demonstrate that you are at the level. Safety promotion. Here also, we are doing a lot, and I must thank John Franklin and his team for all that, and working together with EHA and other stakeholders, Airbus Helicopter, Leonardo, Bell, everybody around the place. And today, we have the Together for Safety website, community. It was only launched last year. It is now fully operational. We have around 500,000 views on the safety promotion material, which is, in a rather small community like Rotorcraft, an outstanding result. 6,000 members of the Rotorcraft community. We have more than 10 videos, 25 articles since the summer 2020. And we've mentioned COVID return to flying, uncertain helipad landings, passenger pressure management, maintenance check flights, flight instructor guide and the like. So it's really very active, and we hope the community is taking benefit of it. Please, if you are not registered to the community, register, and it's on a regular basis that John's team is really updating. And also, in the frame of the COVID, there was an update on the comprehensive well-being support package. We all know that the pilots were trained, the operator also, and all the entire ecosystem, so there is something which is to be done here. And I must stress that it is an excellent cooperation with you, the entire industry. As a conclusion, I'm still on time, I guess, or almost there. We are delivering. despite the circumstances. And the Rotorcraft safety roadmap is moving forward. It's a commitment at agency level, and it's maintained. It represents a large industry consensus, and that's already a big success. I must say it's a living roadmap. It's not a static one. And we are assessing all opportunities, synergies. As mentioned, the one on high conspicuity, but we could really potentially leverage sustainable aviation. We know it's something which the industry will have to tackle. Can we take also the benefit of it in some safety aspects? I'm sure we can. Leveraging eVTOL technologies. There are a lot of eVTOL development all around the places. There are a lot of technology developments that are today specific to eVTOL, but I'm sure they will translate into the conventional rotorcraft industry, and that could be bring a lot of benefit, probably at lower cost, especially if they are developed at scale. And it shows that we are better when we are working together. And I'm glad that in 3 years we did really a big effort to work together. Whether you are competitor on the market, but on the safety side, we gather this spirit. We are working all for the same goal, for an industry goal, and to sustain rotorcraft flights and show to the society that we are here. And I just sum up, in 2018, we planted the seed. In 2019, it was starting to try to show up. There is a gap. 2020 was a special year, so we were in between the two, but 2021, it starts to grow. The roots are deeper within our industry. And 2022, 23, we'll go deeper, we'll go stronger. The roots within our culture, company culture, personal culture are growing. And in 2024, we'll see the results all together. And I think that's where we are all aiming for. And I would like to thank you for your contribution first, for also coming here. I know it's tough in the current circumstances, but it's good to see you all. And we are all ready to engage and keep the dialogue and the work open. Thank you very much.